Hey guys, and welcome back to Monka, where stupid shit ensues, but today I finished a season of anime, and I wanted to talk about it, and effectively finishing this season of anime, I've finished the entire show, because now I've watched the entire show, so now there's not much more to watch, besides the reboot. But what did I finish? Well, by the trend, you might be able to figure out that I finished Sailor Moon, Sailor Stars, is what it was called. Now, Sailor Moon, Sailor Stars is the 5th and final season of Sailor Moon that aired in, I believe, 1997, spring of 1997, if I'm not wrong. Sailor Stars is the 5th and final season of Sailor Moon, besides the reboot that was Sailor Moon Crystal, but at least for the original run, it is the final season of Sailor Moon. It runs for 34 episodes, making it the shortest season by far of Sailor Moon. It seems like every season it got shorter and shorter, and by far this one's the shortest at 34. But what was my opinion on Sailor Moon, Sailor Stars? I'll just call it Sailor Stars. Well, it was decent, but it was probably by far the most underwhelming season of Sailor Moon, besides near the end where it picks up and it becomes like really good. But besides that, it's kind of underwhelming, to be honest. And for an ending, the final episode does a good job of kind of sealing it off and sending off Sailor Moon. I like that, but besides that, it kind of just felt underwhelming, to be honest. But to start off with, we'll talk about kind of like the general stuff, which is the visuals. From what I noticed, the visuals weren't that much different from Sailor Moon Supers, which isn't a bad thing since Sailor Moon Supers looked pretty good, so in turn this show looks pretty good as well. Not too many complaints about the visuals. It looks good. The only complaint I really have is the general, like in this season maybe I noticed it less, but it was probably still there, but they still kind of reuse some animations. I might have just gotten numb to it over watching the 5 seasons, but I still think it was there, but in my mind it seems somewhat less, but it probably was still there. But in terms of visual quality, it's good. At least for the time it aired, it was probably pretty good. You just have to realize it released in 1997, so it's not going to look the best, but it doesn't look bad for what it is. Now, in terms of music, it's kind of the general fare of Sailor Moon music. Honestly, I feel like this was probably the weakest because nothing in this season really stood out to me. I wasn't really like going, oh my god, this song and that song, kind of like I did with Sailor Moon S or the original season of Sailor Moon. This one, I don't know, not too much stood out to me, really. They kind of do have this kind of pop idol theme in the mix for this season, which I'll get to when I talk to the story, and there's some songs in there that are pretty good, but other than that, I don't know, not a lot of the songs were like hitting, like standing out to me, really. It's still good, but really this season had nothing memorable. I can understand it since it's ran for like 5 seasons, so maybe they're running out of like steam at that point, but in terms of the soundtrack, it wasn't too crazy, but it was still decent. Now, in terms of the story of Sailor Moon, Sailor Stars, since this is the final season, they pretty much wrap everything up, put a bow on it at the end, concluding the Sailor Moon run that happened for about 5 years. In terms of the story, though, there are 2 arcs. The first one runs for 6 episodes and concludes the arc introduced in season 4, which is kind of weird because it runs for 6 episodes and closes off the 4th season, when I feel like they could have really just as easily tagged on those 6 episodes at the end of season 4 and concluded season 4 like that, but I digress. That's just kind of how they did it. It's kind of weird because that's just a weird 6-episode story arc, and then the other 28 are the main story arc, but those 6 episodes are fine, nothing to complain about. The other 28 kind of follow the same tropes of Sailor Moon, to be honest, except at this point, instead of being after whatever they were after in the other 4 seasons, this time they're after antagonists or after star seeds, or trying to take people's pure star seeds for the main antagonist leading the group. The trope's kind of worn out at that point after 5 seasons. It feels kind of like the weakest execution of it too. I don't know, it just kind of felt underwhelming, to be honest. Like every season they kind of did the same trope, and in this one it's the same thing, like star seeds, or like similar to they're trying to collect people's star seeds, kind of like you got the pure heart mirrors in season 4. It's kind of the same thing. At that point it kind of feels worn down. Now they do introduce, like, you know, new Sailor Guardians and kind of introduce this like pop idol angle, which is kind of cool, but still it's kind of underwhelming. It just feels burnt out at that point. And really, in terms of the characters, is kind of where it comes through weak, because the new Sailor Guardians honestly are kind of cool and I don't mind them. The antagonists don't really feel all that great, to be honest, like especially compared to like season 3 Sailor Moon S, where the antagonists felt like awesome and had their own personalities. In Sailor Stars, the antagonists just kind of feel like they're forgettable, honestly. I don't really remember, at least the henchmen. Like the main antagonists, yeah, you'll kind of like remember them, but honestly, even then, the main antagonist isn't that great, and the henchmen are pretty forgettable, honestly. So in terms of story, those characters kind of make the story weaker. Now, like I said, in the second arc, it gets good at the end when they actually wrap it all up and you have the final battle, and they kind kind of concludes Sailor Moon. It's pretty good. I enjoyed that. But besides that, it's pretty underwhelming, to be honest. And like I said, that kind of plays into somewhat of the characters. All the voice acting for the characters are fine, to be honest. All the previous Sailor Guardians retake up their roles for the final season, which is great. So all their voice actors are fine. And any previous characters in previous seasons reprise their roles with their voice actors, which is fine. I listened to it, by the way, with the English dubs. I didn't listen to Japanese. But in terms of the characters, not the voice actors, really what makes this season kind of feel weak is that the antagonists, kind of like Sailor Moon Supers, and the henchmen really just have no great personalities that you can enjoy. They all just kind of feel like they're there to be evil, and it's just really kind of boring, to be honest, with their personalities. The new Sailor Guardians, in terms of personalities, are fine in my opinion. They're alright. Like, they're not amazing, but at the same time, I kind of feel like they somewhat carry the season, because Usagi's character kind of feels really weak during this final season for one reason or another. They make her feel like really weak and make her kind of wimpish, which she's always kind of been wimpish through all of the seasons, but especially in season 5, she feels really wimpy and just like weak. And she's always kind of been that character, but it just, at that point, I don't know why, it feels annoying. Maybe it's because the final season, and it just feels like she's been the same character for the entire series, while other characters feel like they've had their growth. Usagi feels like she never really grows, but the new Sailor Guardians are neat. I actually don't mind them. I think they're fine. Like I said, their personalities and them coming to the picture kind of carry the season, but other than that, honestly, there is some disappointment for me in the season due to the fact that some of the little side characters really never come back. Some of them had a strong role until the 3rd season, and then they kind of fall off for the last 2 seasons. So characters like Umino never really come back to the season. I kind of liked Umino. He's a goofy guy, like he's kind of dumb, but he's an enjoyable character, and he never comes back after Supers, really, and he doesn't come back for Sailor Stars either, which is kind of sad. But in terms of the story, I kind of felt underwhelmed, to be honest. The first 6 episodes of the first arc are fine because, you know, they move pretty fast, to be honest. It feels more like a movie, and honestly, that's fine. I kind of like the story of that one. And the last, like, maybe 6 episodes, maybe 7 episodes of the final arc are good, but besides that, the real in-between just feels kind of weak. But in terms of stories and characters, I like the new characters they introduced. I'm kind of disappointed by Usagi's character, never really seeing the growth that she needed to throughout the series. I was kind of disappointed the side characters never returned, and as well, like I said, the antagonists and henchmen really aren't all that great. And like I said, in terms of the story, it's pretty underwhelming as well, just because it feels like they're doing the same thing over and over. The antagonists are underwhelming, and just kind of all of that culmination of stuff really makes the story feel pretty underwhelming for the final season, besides when they wrap it up, though. But in terms of Sailor Moon, Sailor Stars, it's okay. Like, honestly, in terms of the final season of Sailor Moon, it's alright. Definitely not my favorite season. I don't know if I would say it's my least favorite. It's definitely down there, though. It may be my least favorite, honestly. After having time to dwell on the other seasons, I felt like my criticism of Supers was pretty harsh. I feel like Supers was a decent series for the first half, at least, but for the second half, it was kind of underwhelming. But I felt I was kind of harsh in my criticism in that one. But it may very well be my least favorite season of Sailor Moon, honestly. If you're going to be watching Sailor Moon, you're going to watch it anyway, so it doesn't matter. But honestly, it's pretty underwhelming, to be honest. It just feels kind of like, at that point, they've done the same thing so many times, and the series is 200 episodes long, so it felt like it just kind of got worn out at that point. It's fine. It's alright. It's decent. I was able to watch it, but it just kind of felt underwhelming for the final season. But looking back on Sailor Moon, because this is going to pretty much be my final video besides Crystal for at least the original run, I enjoyed the series overall. It definitely had its weak points. It definitely had its strong points. I feel like the strongest points were definitely the first season and S. I feel like S is the best season overall of Sailor Moon, but it was an interesting ride, to be honest. But at this point, I'll be moving on to Naruto. I'll be watching the first season, which is 200 episodes, which will be interesting. So we'll see the next time I upload on this channel. I have a decent backlog, so I'll be working through that. But those 200 episodes are going to take a bit. So yeah, it'll be kind of interesting. But overall, as a series, Sailor Moon, I would say, is worth watching at least up until the 3rd season. 4th and 5th season, you can kind of take it or leave it. But honestly, the first 3 seasons are pretty good. Second one's kind of weak, but it builds up for the 3rd season, which is really strong. But that's Sailor Moon. Maybe see you in a couple years when I decide to watch Crystal. I'm going to take a decent break before I watch that. But thank you very much for watching. Until next time, I'll see you. Stay chill.